Okay, so my presentation today is all about Dynamics 365, the user interface, and in particular the unified interface. So hence the question is your Dynamics 365 interface unified? Okay, thank you to the sponsors for sponsoring this event. And don't forget, you guys, to enter the raffle when you get a chance. My name is Mark Macrae. I'm originally from the UK and now live in New Zealand. I'm a practice lead for Intergen Limited, and I currently run a practice, Dynamics 365 and PowerApps practice. I have over 20 years experience in Microsoft tech, historically SharePoint server, SharePoint Online, and more recently Dynamics 365 and PowerApps. In addition to sort of outside work, my sort of main interests are mountain biking, which I've took up since I've been in New Zealand, football or soccer to the Americans listening, and also heavily into my sort of retro computers. So those of you who know what that game is, they're up on the picture. I'd just be interested if you put your answers in chat just to see if you get that one. Okay, so I just wanted to read that statement. Effectively, the old Dynamics web interface is now deprecated, and you must move to the unified interface before December the 1st this year. So it gives you around 6 months to switch over if you haven't already started the process. So really the point of my presentation today is to introduce you to the unified interface, explain what it is and what the benefits are, also guide you as to how you can move to the unified interface, and just to help you plan that process. So, you know, if you haven't already started the move, then hopefully this will help you. And if you have already moved to the unified interface, then maybe you'll find some additional information about the interface today that you maybe didn't know already. Okay, so what is the unified interface? Well, many of you would particularly know or be familiar with the old Dynamics interface, which has been around really since the product began. So, you know, this kind of, you know, this sort of small fonts and very kind of boring, if you like, user interface. It's not been a great, you know, most exciting tool to use, and also certainly was never really responsive to mobile and other browsers. So you know, this has been around for a long time, and Microsoft had to do something about it. So they rewrote the interface completely from the ground up, and it's now called the unified interface, or the UI as sometimes is shortened to, or UUI, or even UCI. But effectively, it's a more modern, responsive user interface that is seamless kind of across different devices and browsers, improved accessibility, and just generally makes the product much more interesting and intuitive to use. Here's an example of sort of the new screen, the new style screen, and you can sort of immediately see that it's you know, just a much cleaner interface, and I'll show you in the demonstration, like you know, some more features, and just show you around. So we'll just walk through some of the features before I go into a bit of a demonstration. These are the ones that I particularly want to highlight. So the first one is the navigation. So many of you would maybe be familiar with this old style navigation that's been around since sort of CRM 2013, 2015. Takes up quite a lot of screen real estate, and it's quite clunky to use. It's been replaced by this much narrower, more you know, just nicer user interface. It uses SVG icons, which expand or collapse without kind of distortion, depending on the size of the screen that you're using. You can also collapse this right down once you get to know and you're familiar with what the icons represent. You can use it in sort of slimline mode. You got some nice additional options here to like quickly access your recent items and pinned items, and yeah, it's just tucked away a lot nicer and just less clunky than the old navigation. So much more intuitive to use, and I find that users just use it really intuitively and don't really have to have a lot of training to get to know their way around. The next thing I wanted to highlight was the business process flow, and again, those of you that have used Dynamics CRM or 365 previous versions are probably used to this kind of chevron style business process flow, which again took up quite a lot of vertical real estate on the screen. The fonts are not that easy, they're quite small and not that clear. Some of the data on here is easily get hidden. That's been again just replaced by this, what I'd call a London Underground tube style map, where again it's just a much slimline business process flow, just looks a whole lot nicer, sits on the screen, and if you want to access the fields associated with that particular stage, then you'd click that button there and this will drop down. Your next stage buttons are all kind of here as well, and if you wanted to dock that to the right hand side of the screen, then you can click this docker here. So yeah, much nicer, and this will look exactly the same in the Outlook app as well. Dashboards. So dashboards in CRM again have been around for a long time, probably since I think 4 or 2011, in that kind of static format. They never really had any filters and so forth. They've never really been interactive. So they, with the unified interface has come like a new style of dashboard called the interactive dashboards, and these provide you the ability to drill down on charts and access the data much quicker. I find these dashboards are really good for managers who want to see an overview of what's going on in their organization or their team, and then drill down to kind of action points. And I'll show you a bit of a demonstration of that later as well. Just to recap on dashboards, like I said, the old style dashboards with no filters, they're still available, but they're more, I would say they're better for your personal dashboard. The ones I've just been talking about, the interactive ones, they're much better for managers and sort of a role, a management role, to be able to sort of really quickly get a visualization of what's going on, especially in like a service center or a sales team, and then drill down to action points. And then finally, there is Power BI integration, which gives you that kind of top end ability to hook into your, kind of more professional, much more feature rich dashboards, and particularly if you wanted to mash up data outside of Dynamics. Okay, controls. Again, if you think back to Dynamics 3, 4, 2011, 2015, it's the same set of old controls that have been around for God knows how long. So really, this is like the first time that Dynamics has really had a real fresh look and feel. And the next slide kind of explains the framework that underpins the whole user interface. But these it allows basically a rich set of controls to, for example, switches rather than a yes/no radio, allow you to add video, allow you to any kind of numeric values. You could, rather than just type a number in, you can quickly switch to a control like this to just give the user a much nicer way of adding numbers or putting a number in. And I'll show you some more examples in the demonstration. So these are some of the examples, and there's also, the next slide explains that what underpins the unified interface is a whole new component framework that gives developers, the tool sets, a bit like the SharePoint framework, a new kind of modern development framework where you can build your own controls and components for the interface. Really exciting times for Dynamics and developers that have kind of been used to the old style plugins and web resources for forever, basically. And it's just a really exciting time to have access to like new modern JavaScript frameworks, the likes of React, and being able to make your kind of Dynamics interface as feature rich as you want. and also to be able to deploy and deploy those and those controls and push them through to different environments too. And this particular one, is web resources, kind of with the old style way of producing like a more modern interface and introducing that kind of approach where you'd have basically a web page and put it inside an iframe on the page. But that would run in its own context. And the beauty of this is that everything runs in the same context. And therefore, it's kind of seamless to the user. They don't see things loading in the background in kind of Ajax style, in a different thread and waiting for the screen to upload. It all looks seamless as if it's part of the product itself. And that's one of the big wins for me. So if you've got the UI skills, a bit of flair in the design, your Dynamics 365 interface could look something like this. Really, it's limitless in terms of what you can display and how you can represent your data and make it interesting and usable. I want to talk about a reference panel. So again, previously in Dynamics, you'd have had, maybe have a lot of subgrids on the form. So if you think about an account, you might have had a subgrid with a list of related opportunities, another one with related contacts, another one with related cases. And those grids can take up quite a lot of real estate. And a reference panel allows you to layer those in almost like a tabbed style format. So you can see there almost like a tab within a tab, if you like. So within this summary tab on the screen, I've got a nice neat control, and the user can flick between those to see the different related data. Again, just means that they're not having to scroll down a huge vertical form to access that data, and it's just right there at their fingertips. The timeline, which controls your correspondence, has also been revamped. So the old style interface had sort of this tabs where you'd have to flick between your notes and activities and so forth. That's been revamped. You've got a nice filter control here. There's one stream showing the complete kind of correspondence record for that account or contact. You can filter out notes or active activities versus closed activities. You can enter rich text notes now, and just a really nice interface to work with. And the final thing I wanted to kind of talk through is the online help. So the previous online help function was designed for the old style interface, and this new model for the unified interface is great to work with. It's really easy to set up, really easy to, you can assign security roles to, say, your power users to be able to create this content, and it's really intuitive. You can link videos, pointers and so forth to areas on the screen with coach marks and balloons, and again, just a really good guide, online training resource for your 365 custom app. Okay, I'm going to break out the slides, and I'm going to show you a bit of a demo. So here is my Dynamics 365 application. If I open up one of these accounts, so I've kind of got a new marathon application. I've created some sponsors and attendees and some opportunities. So as if it's sort of Joel and the gang sort of using this to manage their event. If I open up one particular account record, you'll see that, here, for example, rather than just a number of employees, I've got a nice graphical representation. So I've given it some boundaries. If I was to lower that to 1,000, it would sort of, adjust that graphics. So that's pretty cool. We've got things like, for example, a website control. So rather than just static text, it can actually show the home page. I find that's not actually that great, and that's an opportunity for developers to perhaps coder better control. This is one that's kind of come with the new unified interface. Again, a video, so you can sort of maybe play a promo video for your organization, or just a video that you've recorded about that account or something like that, just a high level, maybe from the sales team, be quite useful. Here's your timeline where we've got our records. There's a new feature where we can enter rich text notes now. That only took like about 20 years to come out. We've been waiting for that Dynamics users for as long as the first version, I think. The filter there will allow you to sort of filter that timeline down to maybe only show certain record types. So here we go. So if I only want to show my notes, or I want to show things in a certain date time frame, for example. So I want to show all activities, but maybe in the last day. So yeah, really cool, and again, just really easy to work with. Here's that reference panel. So rather than having 3 subgrids, I've grouped them together in a nice tabbed reference panel, so I can see my contacts, I can see my opportunities, and my cases as well, just without having to scroll. And you know, everything's kind of at a touch, and that's the idea, really, just to make it easy for, especially, you know, someone who's maybe going on the road and visiting this particular account. You just want to be able to access the data at the fingertips, and this will be kind of the same UI experience on their mobile or tablet device. Cool. So also wanted to show you like the business process flow. So if we go into like an opportunity, so there's an opportunity for some platinum sponsorship here for AdventureWorks, and again, there's like a nice dial there. So their budget, you know, maybe they've given us a call and they said, actually, we're going to whack our budget up to like 7.5K. So rather than have to type it in, I've got a nice slider control, and here's my business process flow. So I can see the qualify step here. I've pretty much done everything needed, so I'm going to move that on to the next stage, and I can dock that out to the right hand side if I want to sort of, you know, scroll around, and I don't want that hovering over my data for me, so I can put it out to the right, which is pretty cool. Also, just a word on the navigation while we're here. So you know, here's my sort of pinned items, my recent items. So again, I might want to sort of pin that list and you know, come back to it later, especially these are the sort of things that I'm working on this week. So yeah, really nice, cool menu system. And again, I can collapse that down to minimize it and give as much real estate on my screen to the key data that I want to see. If we look at dashboards, if I hook into like the customer service hub here and go to the tier 2 dashboards, it's an example where I'm looking at maybe cases and I'm a manager, and here's my kind of dashboard showing me what's going on. I can say, okay, there's these 7 high priority cases here. Let's click on that and drill in a bit. Okay, there's sort of, here's where they've come in. I can see there's like this. I can see that the date range is this quarter, so let's maybe home in on just like yesterday. I can see we're down to 3 now, and there's this particular one, maintenance have had a bit of a problem recently, so let's home in on that. And here I've got my record, so I can sort of open that up if I want to, or I can, if I think Mark's got a bit too much work on, I can assign it to another person in the team. I can escalate it with a routing rule. So again, really good for managers to drill into see the picture of what's going on and drill down and action items. Okay, so I think what we'll do now is flick back to the slides. And what I want to cover now is, you know, I've given you sort of a bit of background now as to what the unified interface is about and some of the features. And what I want to go through now is moving to the unified interface. So if you're still on the old web interface and you're a bit kind of, you're sweating a little bit because December's creeping up and you're not quite sure what to do or how to approach it or how much effort it's going to be, hopefully the next few slides will answer some questions for you. So if you do have some legacy web apps, so you've created web apps using, they'll say web down here. So if you created web apps with the old interface, or a lot of you, maybe especially if you've upgraded from previous versions of Dynamics, or you've, because this applies to on-prem as well as online. If you've upgraded, or if you've adopted an early version of online and you've kind of, again, gone through the upgrade process online, you may have some of these old web apps, and you particularly might be using the custom default app, because in the old version of Dynamics there wasn't a concept of apps. It was the app, and that was it, and that's kind of carried forward now into the custom app. You'll see this warning up here, and it will say basically, you need to get these apps upgraded. So if, on the other hand, you have provisioned a new tenant, you will basically be on the kind of unified interface only mode, which means everything you do is in the unified interface. The legacy custom app will be kind of hidden, and you won't be able to find it, and you might be wondering what's going on. So if you've upgraded or kind of refreshed your version and things have disappeared, that's probably why. So you need to turn that off for a time being until you've migrated. Now the easiest way to transition is to use something called the hybrid experience, which is basically, you move your apps to the unified experience. The unified user interface, but you're also supporting like legacy dialogues. So there's a few of these down here which haven't yet been converted to the new UI. So things like advanced find, bulk edit, audit history. If you access, basically if you have, going back to the previous slide, switch to unified interface only, then unless you additionally switch the hybrid experience on, those things will disappear and you won't be able to access advanced find, for example. You'll find that's just disappeared off your toolbar. So, and there's also a bit of, not just within the user experience, but also within the administrator experience, there's kind of like a hybrid thing going on as well, because some things have been moved to PowerApps. So you can see this screen here is like a PowerApps admin screen, the kind of PowerApps purple and white. But the hybrid mode and some other features, basically you need to use the legacy administration settings area to switch this on. So you'll notice that in here, the hybrid experience just isn't listed. You have to go to the legacy, and there's an option in settings to switch that on. That will basically make the these features that I've kind of highlighted here, they will basically come on. Sorry, I've moved my slide on too quickly. Yeah, so basically these things like record sharing and so forth, you'll be able to have those back on. How do you update an app? So basically, in a nutshell, it's a very easy thing to do. It can be done very quickly, and I'd probably advise you do this in like a test environment. But basically, you open your app and you look at the settings or the properties for your app, and it will say, if it's an old web app, you can switch it to use the unified interface, and then you can test your app out. That's pretty much all you have to do. You won't be able to move back to the web app, so that's why I recommend you switch to or do this on a test environment first before you go into production. But effectively, that's all you need to do, and then you'll just go through the functionality for your application and just make sure that everything is transferred over correctly. You don't have to redesign everything or sort of do any coding as such, but there are a few things that you do need to check. So particularly review your form layout. I find that the old legacy form where you kind of maybe use multiple columns and doesn't quite transfer nicely to the new layout. it's kind of the new layout. I prefer like a more of a vertical layered approach, especially as when you collapse the app into kind of like if you think like a mobile device collapses right down to be quite a narrow user interface, then you know, things will stack under each other. You need to check your icons. If you've got a legacy app, you're more likely to have the sort of PNG or JPEG icons, and these will look really blurry in your UI, like these over here. If you replace those with some SVG icons, then that's really the more supported approach. So they'll be a lot cleaner and they'll expand and contract. Used to have separate sized icons for the different parts of the interface, but now it's just one SVG icon serves the lot. There is a really nice white paper. I've got a link on the deck there, which is sort of a business orientated white paper about the approach to take in changing your apps to the unified interface and the kind of impact and things you need to check. So I'd suggest that you read that, especially sort of larger organizations that have more kind of governance in place and checks to go through before sort of updating an application like Dynamics in your business. So yeah, just a little pointer there for that. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a quick demo now of the hybrid experience. So I'm going to go back into my Dynamics environment. So here you'll see, for example, I've got no advanced find icon, which is that kind of funnel icon that's normally up here. And that's quite an important app component of Dynamics 365. And without that, your users will be pretty lost especially if they're used to querying data. Also, if I go to my accounts and I want to perhaps merge those two records, the merge icon is not there. I don't have any sharing. So there's quite a few like features that would be missing. So what we need to do is basically go to so if you go to the cog up here, go to the advanced settings, that takes you to the what is now like the legacy settings area. Here we go. So this will be pretty familiar. These kind of icons and so forth have been around certainly since CRM 3 when I started working with CRM. So you're going back probably certainly over nearly 15 years. If we go to the administration area and system settings, a lot of these settings have been kind of moved into the new PowerApps admin console now, but some haven't. And if we scroll down to the so here we go, we've got the legacy app. So that's that kind of custom app. Now, when you go to unified interface only, that will be hidden from your users and only an administrator will see that. So if you are really reliant, if the custom app is your only app for now, then you'll need to switch that to yes to allow your users to continue using that until such time that you can create a custom app in the unified interface for them and transfer them over to that. Let's have a look. I always seem to miss this one, this hybrid. Enable embedding of certain legacy dialogues in the unified interface client. So that's the one. We switch that over to yes, click OK. And then if I go back to my interface and do a refresh, there's my advanced find. So you can see that renders in the kind of 2000s, early 2000s kind of mode. Also, I get to, get my merge back and my share button back and so forth. So that's the recommended approach if you're looking to transfer over, is to basically make sure you switch that on. While we're in here, I just wanted to show you the online help. I forgot to demonstrate that earlier. So here up here on the question mark sign, when you configure the online help, and again, I'll just show you quickly how to do that. So we go into system settings, scroll down here to the custom help. Now there's lots of things here, a mix up of legacy and unified, and really the old learning path stuff is legacy now. And basically all you want to do is switch this on. So this enable custom help panes and guided tasks, switch that to yes. What that does is enables the help icon here to switch out a pane, and let's see if it was on the, oh yeah, I'm in the wrong app, excuse me. Let's go back to my Marathon app, and so here we go. So here's a custom help screen that I've authored. So it just says how to create or edit a sponsor file. I've got a bit of text in here. I've got a section that I can collapse and expand. If I click on there, you can see I've got a little pop out. Again, just a nice guide for users. There's that thing here. So I've said basically you need to fill out the mandatory fields. So if they click that, you give a nice sort of balloon there to highlight. And then also you can play video.
Delivery, good delivery here.
One of the best Champions League goals ever. Just wanted to kind of spare a few nanoseconds showing that. Cool. I'm going to drop back out, back into my slides and just finish off. I think just check my timing. So I think we've got about 10 minutes to go. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit now about model-driven apps, which are the kind of, the backbone really around. So everything is kind of app-driven now in Dynamics. So before you, like I said, you just had really a single app. That's now become the custom app or legacy app. And if you've only got that, especially, you need to really go ahead and create yourself a model-driven app. So you would do this by going to the settings and going to My Apps. There's my alarm telling me that I've got 10 minutes left. So you'd go into the app, you would, you basically get access to a sitemap, so you can sort of, create your menu system and your navigation. And then for each of the entities, so I'll just get my laser on here, so I can highlight something. So each of these entities that you choose for your application, you can pick which forms and views and charts and so forth you display. So you don't have to have them all, especially if you're creating a custom form. You don't want to use the out-of-the-box one and you only want to show the custom form in your app, then you just click that and just pick the one that you want. You also need to make sure you apply security roles to the app, because if you don't do that, your users won't see it in the app picker. And you also just need to make sure you got some good SVG icons prepared, especially for your custom entities, and just apply those. And just a word on the icons, there's a great resource there, flaticon.com. There's probably a few more, but they give you a lot of free resources, and that's my go-to. Just to get a nice set of, you can use the colored icons. I tend to use the monochrome icons. I just feel that they look a bit better and render a bit better in the UI, but that's my preference. There's a great resource on there, and you just sort of save those down, upload them into your package as a web resource, and then access them from your interface. Okay, so I'm just going to show you now a quick demo how to build a model-driven app. So if I go back into my Dynamics environment, I'll go to my settings area. And if I go to my apps, here's all the apps that I've got access to at the moment. Being an administrator, I can see them all. And if you, if you're in Office 365, so here's my Outlook here. Oh, while I'm in Outlook, by the way, I will just quickly show you, here's an email that's come in about an opportunity. And as soon as I've got the Dynamics 365 add-in for Outlook installed, I can see, my Dynamics pane pop out here, and I can sort of maybe just browse down here. And I can maybe see, if I look at AdventureWorks, I can see, some details about them, and perhaps I can track that. Or maybe I want to go back and see just drill into their record. And again, you just see the same kind of experience as I showed you on the web. So great, you can just use Dynamics just like that from within Outlook, and perfect, and track icons and just browse around. And okay, so my point was that if we go to if I go to my Dynamics, this is kind of the home launch screen, and effectively my default app when I go to my environment URL, it will take me straight into the default app, as opposed to always going into the legacy web app, which it used to do. So if I go back to my app screen, I can create a new app here. Obviously, you need to be a customizer or an administrator to be able to do this. I create my new app, call this one Marathon 2. I can add a custom icon if I want. Then I need to configure my sitemap. So I might have an area up here, for example, called customers. Or actually, that's probably that could be my main area of the app. Say my group here would be my customers, and then I'd add a new sub area. So I can use a web resource. I can flick to a URL, but or a dashboard, but I'm going to pick an entity. I'm just going to pick, for example, account. Just missed that. Oh yeah, I've called it sponsor, that's why. There we go. I can override it with a local name if I wanted to, and I can click save and close. Then I can pick what dashboards I want. And again, because I've picked sponsor, I can say, actually, I don't want all the forms available. I only want my marathon form to be available. And I can save. And I'll publish that. And there we go. And there's my app completely published. So if I then close out, refresh here, there's my new app. I then need to make sure that I manage the roles that can access that app. So if I go to my, so I've got another user here called Clint Eastwood. So if he loads Dynamics, he's in the Marathon app, and that's the only app he's got access to. But if I flick back and I give this Marathon 2 app access to the Sales Manager role, Then if I flick back to Clint and give him a refresh, he's now got access to that Marathon 2 app. So really apps, think of apps as like a role base. So rather than everyone using the same version of Dynamics 365 as they did in the past, you would now create apps for your sales team, for your customer service team. You might have a really niche sales team that go out on the road that basically only need access to contacts and accounts, and that's it. They don't need all that other clutter in their navigation. You'd create them a bespoke app, maybe a bespoke form, because they literally only want to add notes and look at meetings and activities. So you could create them a really nice cut down form that just has that data, make it really easy for them to see where they're going, enter their notes, real sort of on the road app. And with the new unified experience, they can have a really great experience with Dynamics and PowerApps. Cool. So now I'm going to go back to my slides and just finish off. So just a few kind of takeaways that I hope you got from this presentation, really. Firstly, remember the legacy web app client is deprecated, and you must move to the new one by December the 1st, because that's when Microsoft stopped supporting it. And if you've got any issues, then you're really kind of in the dark there. The UI is ready. If you talked to sort of a year ago, then or 18 months ago, there would be a lot of holes in the user interface, a lot of features that hadn't been transferred across. That's all now gone away. It's completely ready for you to use. Certainly, it was not difficult to switch. Do that in a UAT environment. If you haven't got an app to switch, or you've only got the web client, the main sort of legacy web app, then create yourself a new unified interface app in the approach that I just showed you, and then test that out in your test environment. Make sure your users are comfortable with it. If you wanted to do a longer project, you haven't got a lot of time, but if you wanted to do a slightly longer project, you could investigate some of those new controls and custom help experience and things like that. But I would, if you're not on the unified interface right now, my recommendation would be just to move across, test the functionality you've got, and make sure it's all transferred across seamlessly, and then plan a upgrade project to refresh your UI at a later date. So that's it from me. That's all I've got to say. I want to thank you. I don't know if there's any questions from anybody. I've got a few minutes to answer. Please give feedback if you can. And thank you for listening. I hope you have a great event, and hope you're all keeping safe out there. And thank you again for attending.